The air inside the Heritage Hall at St. Jude's Institute doesn't just smell like old money, it smells like the absence of dust. It is a vacuum of privilege, curated at a cost of $4,000 per square foot of mahogany paneling in Italian marble. When you walk through those double oak doors, the acoustics change. The frantic hum of the outside world, the sirens of the city, the heat of the pavement, is swallowed by a heavy, velvet silence. I stood in the center of the foyer, my heels clicking with a metronomic precision that felt offensive to the stillness. Around me, the architecture did the talking. The portraits of past deans, all men with names like Winchester and Sterling, stared down with a collective, painted gaze that asked a single silent question: how did you get past the gate? I wasn't here to answer them. I was here to audit them. I checked my watch, a vintage Patek Philippe, a gift to myself after my first successful short sell in my sophomore year. It was 6:02 p.m. The Presidential Circle Gala was already in its first phase of social lubrication. In this room, power wasn't loud. It was a soft clink of Waterford crystal and the dry, paper-thin rustle of $100 silk. "Elias, is that you?" The voice was like expensive scotch poured over jagged glass. I turned to see Dr. Sterling Vance, the Dean of Admissions and the self-appointed architect of St. Jude's global vision. He was exactly what you'd expect: silver hair maintained by a $500 a month barber, a bespoke navy blazer, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes, which were the color of a cold Atlantic morning. He didn't walk toward me so much as he glided, his hand already extended, in a gesture that was less a greeting and more a claim of ownership. "Sir?" I said, my voice level. I didn't smile. In the world of high-stakes negotiations, a smile is often a leak of information. Vance didn't notice, or perhaps he didn't care. He placed a heavy paternal hand on my shoulder, his thumb pressing just a bit too firmly into the fabric of my suit. "Look at you," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial theatricality. "The suit, the posture, truly our greatest success story this decade. I was just telling the board about the, let's call it the raw potential we saw in your application from that little school in the East Ward. You've cleaned up beautifully." I watched him. To Vance, I wasn't a student who had maintained a 4.0 GPA while running a quant trading bot from my dorm room. I was a metric. I was a row on a spreadsheet labeled social impact. I was a data point he could leverage at the next endowment meeting to prove that St. Jude's wasn't just a finishing school for the sons of oligarchs. "I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Dr. Vance," I replied. I used the word opportunity like a baited hook. "Of course you do," he chuckled, a sound that lacked any genuine warmth. He leaned in closer, the scent of expensive gin and mint-infused water wafting off him. "Now listen, Elias, we're going into the main hall in 10 minutes. I've moved you to table 1. Right between CEO Marcus Thorne and the widow of Senator Gregson. It's the diversity spotlight table. When the cameras come around for the brochure shots, just be yourself. Mention the scholarship. Mention how the St. Jude's Bridge program saved you from the cycle of your neighborhood. The donors love the miracle narrative. It's what keeps the checks coming." I felt the weight of his hand again. It wasn't the hand of a mentor, it was the hand of a man checking the quality of a prize horse before showing it to the buyers. "The miracle narrative," I repeated slowly. "Is that what we're calling it this year? Last year, the internal memo called it the aesthetic correction protocol." Vance's hand froze. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a micro-expression of annoyance that vanished as quickly as it appeared. He laughed it off, but his eyes narrowed. You always did have a sharp tongue, Elias. Just make sure it doesn't cut your own throat. You're our token of progress tonight. Don't overthink the role. You're here because we chose to let you in. Remember that hierarchy. It's the only thing keeping this place standing." He patted my shoulder twice, thump, thump, and turned away to greet a man who likely owned a significant portion of the Midwest. I stood there, alone for a moment in the corridor. My internal monologue wasn't a roar of anger, it was a cold clinical sequence of code. I looked through the room through a different lens. I didn't see a gala, I saw a system of fiduciary negligence disguised as philanthropy. I thought about the diversity numbers Vance was so proud of, the 12% increase in minority enrollment he had touted in the annual report. I knew the truth because I had spent the last 6 months performing a forensic analysis of the Institute's registrar data. I had bypassed their superficial PR firewalls and looked at the actual enrollment retention. They weren't admitting 12% more students like me. They were admitting legacy students with dual citizenships or children of foreign business partners, then reclassifying their ethnicity codes to pad the stats. The actual students from underprivileged backgrounds, like the boy I used to be, were being quietly off-ramped after the first semester due to stipend technicalities that never seemed to get fixed. Vance thought he was the house, and I was just a lucky player at the table. He didn't realize that I hadn't come to play the game. I had come to buy the casino, strip it for parts, and expose the rot in the foundation. In my jacket pocket was a slim, encrypted flash drive. It contained the discrepancy reports, the internal emails where Vance joked about shining up the tokens, and the audit trail of the missing scholarship funds that had been diverted into the renovations of the faculty club. I looked towards the main hall. The lights were dimming. The theater was about to begin. Vance walked to the podium, the spotlight catching the silver in his hair, making him look like a god of the old world. He tapped the microphone. The room fell into an expectant, respectful hush. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vance began, his voice booming with a rehearsed, hollow authority. "Tonight, we celebrate the future, a future of inclusion, a future of excellence. And tonight, I want to introduce you to the face of that future." He looked directly at me and beckoned with a finger. I didn't move towards the table. I moved towards the side entrance where I saw the first of the 3 uninvited guests I had coordinated with. The tide hadn't just turned, it had gone out and revealed the jagged, ugly rocks beneath the surface, and Dr. Sterling Vance was about to realize he was standing on the shore, completely naked.
Vance's hand remained extended, a frozen command in the spotlight. For 3, maybe 4 seconds, the room hung in a state of suspended animation. The wealthy donors tilted their heads, confused by the delay. They expected a grateful walk to the podium, a humble speech about overcoming odds, and perhaps a misty-eyed thank you to the board. Instead, I stayed in the shadows of the periphery. I didn't look at the stage. I looked at the grand double doors at the rear of the hall. On cue, they swung open. There was no fanfare. 3 people entered. They weren't wearing black tie. They wore charcoal gray suits of such severe utilitarian tailoring that they looked like a surgical team entering a chaotic operating theater. At the lead was Lawrence Crane, the managing partner of Sterling & Crane, a firm that specialized in one thing: the liquidation of institutions that had outlived their legal utility. Behind him was a woman with a digital recorder and a look of profound, professional boredom. The silence that followed was expensive. It was the sound of a billion-dollar endowment losing its tax-exempt status in real time. "Dr. Vance." Crane's voice didn't need a microphone. It carried the weight of a federal injunction. "We've served the papers to your general counsel in the parking lot. I suggest you step away from the lectern.
You no longer have the standing to address this body." Vance's face underwent a fascinating chemical reaction. The practiced bronze glow of his tan curdled into a sickly, translucent gray. His hand, still reaching for me, began to tremble, just a millimeter, but enough to catch the light. "Lawrence?" Vance stammered, his dean persona cracking to reveal the panicked bureaucrat underneath. "What is this? This is a private gala. We are celebrating a massive case of fiduciary malpractice and Title IX fraud," I said, finally stepping into the light. My voice was quiet, but in that silent room, it sounded like a gunshot. I didn't walk to the podium. I walked to the edge of table 1, where Marcus Thorne sat. I placed a folder, hard copy, heavy stock, directly onto his gold-rimmed dinner plate. "Mr. Thorne," I said, looking the billionaire directly in the eye, "you've donated $40 million over the last 5 years to the Bridge Scholarship. You were told that money funded 85 full-ride students from the inner city. If you look at Exhibit B, you'll see that 64 of those students are actually the children of the Institute's offshore business partners. They were given secondary H-4 visas and recategorized as underrepresented through a shell company loophole. Your $40 million didn't fund a bridge, it funded a laundromat." Thorne didn't look at the folder. He looked at Vance. The look was cold enough to flash freeze the champagne in the room. Vance tried to laugh. It was a dry, rattling sound. "This is the imagination of a disgruntled student. Elias, I know you're under pressure with finals, but it's not imagination, Sterling. It's math," I interrupted. I turned to the audience, my movements calculated and sharp. St. Jude's Institute claims a 15% diversity rate, but if you strip away the aesthetic correction protocol, the internal memo Dr. Vance signed last July, that number drops to 2.4%. You see, the Institute didn't want diversity. They wanted the appearance of it to satisfy the ESG requirements of their institutional investors. They admitted people like me to sit in the front row of the brochures, while they diverted the actual scholarship funds into the Capital Improvement Fund, specifically the $3 million Italian marble floor we're currently standing on. The woman with the digital recorder, the lead investigator for the National Education Audit Bureau, stepped forward. She held up a tablet. "We have the server logs, Dr. Vance," she said, her tone clinical. "We have the emails where you instructed the registrar to reskin the demographics of the 2024 incoming class to bypass the federal audit. We also have the testimony of 4 former financial aid officers who were fired for refusing to sign off on the diversion of funds." The collapse of Sterling Vance was a masterclass in gravity. He didn't fall, but he seemed to shrink. The bespoke blazer suddenly looked 2 sizes too large. He gripped the edges of the mahogany podium as if it were a life raft in a rising tide. You ungrateful little," he hissed, his voice finally losing its polished veneer. "We gave you everything. We pulled you out of the gutter. You'd be nothing without this name on your resume." "Actually, Dr. Vance," I leaned in so only he could hear the edge in my voice, "I'm the one who's been managing the Institute's Restricted Growth Fund for the last 6 months through my internship. You thought I was a token. You forgot that tokens are spent. I didn't just study your system, I audited it, and then I shorted it." I turned back to the room. Lawrence Crane was already handing out folders to the other board members. The gala had become a crime scene. "The Board of Trustees is being served with a derivative suit as we speak," Crane announced. "Based on the evidence provided by our whistleblower, Elias, the state is freezing the endowment's discretionary accounts pending a full forensic reconstruction. This institution is now under administrative receivership." Vance finally let go of the podium. He stumbled back, his heel catching on the very marble he had stolen from the students to buy. No one reached out to catch him. The presidential circle donors shifted away, their faces masks of elite self-preservation. They weren't disgusted by the fraud, they were disgusted by the fact that they had been caught in it. I watched him. There was no joy in it, only the cold satisfaction of a balanced equation. "You're done, Sterling." The miracle narrative just hit the reality of a federal audit, and the numbers don't lie. Vance looked at me, and for the first time he saw me. Not as a metric, not as a face for a brochure, but as the predator who had been sitting in his classroom all along. I checked my watch. 6:15 p.m. The entire hierarchy of St. Jude's had been dismantled in exactly 13 minutes. The transition from venerable institution to bankrupt crime scene happens with the speed that would make a Silicon Valley startup blush. Within 48 hours, the mahogany-paneled corridors of St. Jude's were no longer filled with the soft-soled loafers of the elite. They were occupied by forensic accountants from the state attorney's office and technical consultants from my own firm. I didn't take the dean's office. I didn't want the ghost of Vance's perfume or the weight of his legacy. Instead, I set up a war room in the library underneath the vaulted ceiling that had been paid for by the very scholarships they had stolen. The reconstruction was clinical. We didn't just fire the board, we liquidated the legacy outreach department entirely. We converted the faculty club's wine cellar into an emergency fund for students who had been off-ramped under the old regime. Every dollar of the Capital Improvement Fund was diverted into a direct deposit ledger for the 2026 class. No loopholes, no aesthetic corrections, just raw, transparent math. By the end of the week, I was looking over the final termination papers for the remaining administrative staff. There was one name left: Dr. Sterling Vance. He hadn't been arrested yet. The legal process for fraud of this magnitude moves with the glacial pace of a dying empire. But he was a pariah. His assets were frozen. His country club membership had been revoked by a board that was terrified of being associated with his collapse. I found him in his office on Friday evening. He was packing a single leather briefcase. The room was mostly bare. The portraits of the great men had already been taken down for evidence tagging. Without the art and the ego, the office looked like what it actually was: a high-priced cage. Vance didn't look up when I entered. He was staring at a small silver clock on his desk, a gift from a foreign dignitary whose son had earned a spot at St. Jude's through a 6-figure donation to the tennis court fund. "You've effectively destroyed a 200-year-old tradition in 5 days, Elias," he said. His voice was no longer Scotch and glass. It was just old. "I hope the moral victory is worth the wreckage. This school provided a service. We groomed the leaders of the next century. We provided a certain stability." I sat in the chair opposite him, the one usually reserved for nervous applicants. I crossed my legs and adjusted the cuff of my shirt. "You didn't provide stability, Sterling. You provided a counterfeit currency," I said. "You traded in the idea of excellence while selling the actual seats to the highest bidder. You weren't grooming leaders. You were curators of a museum for the incompetent." Vance finally looked at me. There was a spark of his old arrogance left, a flickering ember in the ash. "And you? What are you? The great equalizer? You used the same tools I did. You used the access, the data, the hidden traps. You're just as cold as any man I've ever admitted." "The difference," I said, leaning forward into the sliver of evening light hitting the desk, "is that I don't confuse my status with my worth. You thought that because you had the dean's title and the Sterling name, you were untouchable. You thought the system was your armor. You forgot that systems are just sets of rules, and rules are only as strong as the integrity of the data. I took a single sheet of paper from my folder and slid it across the desk. It was a printout of his personal pension fund, highlighted in red. I've filed a clawback motion on your severance and your retirement. The state has agreed that since these funds were commingled with the diverted scholarship accounts, they are subject to forfeiture. You're leaving here with exactly what you gave the students you pushed out. Nothing. Vance looked at the paper. His hand reached for the silver clock, then stopped. He realized he didn't even own the air in the room anymore. What now? You've won. You've exposed the fake numbers. What does the token student do now that he's broken the machine? I stood up. I didn't feel a rush of triumph. I felt the quiet, steady hum of a job completed to specification. I'm not a token, Sterling. I'm the audit. And the thing about an audit is that once it's done, it doesn't matter how the subject feels about the result. The numbers simply are what they are. I walked toward the door, my heels clicking on the marble that was now officially a liability on the school's balance sheet. You spent your whole life trying to curate the perfect image. You focused on the aesthetic correction. You should have focused on the foundation, because when the foundation is rot, the prettier the house looks, the faster it burns. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. I walked out of St. Jude's and into the crisp city air. The presidential circle was gone. The fake diversity stats were a matter of public record. The school would survive, but it would be different. It would be honest. It would be a place where a student's presence wasn't a PR strategy, but a result of their own intellectual capital. Status is a performance. It's a costume that the elite wear to convince themselves they belong at the top. But worth? Worth is the thing they can't take away. And more importantly, it's the thing they can't fake when the lights go out and the auditors arrive. I got into my car and didn't look back at Heritage Hall. I had a new set of data to analyze. There are many more institutions that think their foundations are made of stone, when they're actually made of paper. And I've always been very good at lighting matches.